How'd you do? All right. So I think that, I don't know. I was just looking. I think that where my text marking shows where I started to understand, or, I'm just grasping. Okay. I mark it when I kind of understand it. Like, okay, I get what he's saying. Oh, that agrees with what he said earlier. And I keep marking. So just to give you the idea what I mark and why I mark it. All right, so civil government. Here's what I got from these two guys. The first one was Thoreau, and what he was saying towards civil government is that people still have to use their conscience. That as soon as I get it down here, I write it up here. He's saying, don't resign a thought to the law. Still have to, keep man's ability and the intrinsic ability to have your own distinct thought. You have to keep that, and that people in general are treated as enemies by the law. I thought that was really interesting, and he said that down toward the bottom. I'm on line 34. Again, where I started to understand what he was talking about. Okay, so here's MLK. So what I thought that he was saying about civil government is there are two different types of laws. There's unjust and just. And it's okay to follow just laws, because just laws are those, I didn't write it because I underlined it, but just laws are those that uplift human personality, keep human personality in check. Unjust laws, okay, so follow just laws, but you break unjust laws. Unjust are not natural. And he went down more, even quoted St. Thomas Aquinas. I'll have to look that up. I think it's Aquinas. St. Thomas Aquinas, and I thought that was interesting that and St. Augustine, that he brought in, the saints. Okay, so let's look at some of the questions. Remember, if this is true, most of our questions are going to come from passage 2, which is good because we never skim over passage 2 and we understand everything about passage 2 because we read it. And we can always refer back to our theme if we ever feel a little concerned or lost. Okay. I love it when they start with the most nearly means. All right, so we're going to use our strategy. We'll come over to line 22. Most nearly means such. Okay, so I'm going to just look at a little bit beforehand because I feel like I can't jump right into that sentence and understand what it is. Such get no more respect than men of straw or a lump of dirt. Okay, so we're going to go before. But they put themselves on a level with wood and earth and stones, and wooden men can perhaps be manufactured that will serve the purpose as well. Such, I said before, such get no more respect than men of straw or a lump of dirt. They have some sort of worth, only as horses and dogs. So this is they're not getting respect. Yet such as those even are commonly esteemed good citizens. So let's not go too far. Such no more respect than men of straw or a lump of dirt. Something similar to get, receive. Such receive no more respect. People don't respect them as much. So we'll look for those. I'll write our 2 words up here just so that you remember. Order, does that mean get or receive? Maybe, I'll keep that one. I can see how that means get or receive. However, automatically I'm thinking by order they mean like a hierarchical order or a numbered order, so that actually wouldn't work in that. But let's see. Dominate, get or receive? No. Overlook does not mean get or receive. Deserve, I like that one. Okay, so now I'm going to go back in and reread it with order or deserve. Such order no more respect than men of straw or a lump of dirt. Such deserve no more respect. It's definitely deserve. That meets the context. So remember, in 2016, when this test changed, what they did was they realized that they weren't going to test anymore on higher level vocabulary. It used to be a vocabulary test. And what they do now is they look for words and phrases in context and test you on whether or not you understand, using contextual clues, how to use a commonly used word in a phrase in context. So that strategy is the only way to get those ones right. All right, here we go. Thoreau makes which point about people who follow their conscience? Now remember, Thoreau was saying you have to use your conscience. You have to use your conscience. Don't resign thought to the law. So use your conscience. But the state often treats people as enemies. So we're going to look for the one that matches what we wrote. We're looking for a theme. The point about people who follow their conscience, that was the theme. That was the point of the entire thing. That people often band together with other entities to form corporations. I remember that was mentioned, but that doesn't match my theme, that they're not banding together. Again, the theme, use your conscience, don't resign thought to the law, and treat it as enemies by the law. People who follow their conscience, they tend to have mutually antagonistic relationships with their governments. I like that word. Because treated as enemies by the law. And we can think about from your English class, in our reading, there's always a protagonist and an antagonist, and the antagonist's job is always to make it more interesting. So they have mutually antagonistic, argumentative, enemy relationship with their government. I like that one a lot. If I was running out of time, I'd pick that one, but they generally believe that the exercise of the moral sense is what makes them human. That's kind of close, right? They have to use their conscience. However, the part I don't like is what makes them human, because there was never anything that was distinguishing them from anything like that. They generally believe that the exercise of the moral sense is what makes them human. I'm only keeping it because it, talks about using your consciousness, your conscience, moral sense, but we're going to narrow it down to two. They hold their legislatures to a different moral standard than that which they hold themselves. That was not the case in this reading. Okay, so between the two, which one most closely matches our theme? You know already that I fell in love with B, so I like B, but they tend to have mutually antagonistic relationships with their government. If you're following the conscience, you're going to argue with your government. Or they generally believe that the exercise of the moral sense is what makes them human. Between those two, I'm definitely choosing B because it matches my theme. When we're looking for evidence now, I am going to see what we have already looked at. This came from line 22, and because it came from line 22, I have to follow, this is an evidence one, so I'm going to follow the question order rule, and that means I can get rid of this one, I can get rid of this one, and it means I can get rid of that one. But let's test it and make sure before you don't believe me, that what are we looking for? We're looking for evidence that people who follow their conscience argue with the government. They're antagonistic. The government is an antagonistic relationship. People aren't always antagonistic. So, and it should be in line 30 to 34. Let's hope. I underlined it. I thought that was interesting. A very few as heroes, patriots, martyrs, reformers in the great sense, and men serve the state. So a very few serve the state with their conscience also. We're not matching words. So just because it says conscience doesn't mean I'm choosing it. We're not matching words, but let's see what they say. And so necessarily resist it for the most part. And they are commonly treated as enemies by it. That says our theme all day long. So I'm definitely choosing that one. And here we are on passage 2. That was fast. Okay. Just as a reminder, our theme on passage 2 is follow just laws, break unjust laws, and unjust are not natural. So you can follow just laws, but you should break unjust laws. According to King, an unjust statute should not be. All right, I'm going to look at this one really quickly, because when they throw into two negatives, Sometimes it throws me a little bit. So I'm stopping myself right here because I have an unjust statute. Should not be. So I want to break this down for myself a little bit because, and by break it down, I mean like break it down to, kindergarten. According to King, a bad statute, so that's another way of saying a bad law. According to King, a bad law should not be. And I can already answer that before I look through. Like, a bad law should not be followed, right? He believes that a bad law should not be followed. Okay. Regarded as having moral authority? Yes. 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 Okay, I'm keeping that one. Should not be broken in a manner intended to attract attention. He said the opposite. Break it and do so lovingly and openly. A bad law should not be viewed as detrimental to the human spirit. That's going a little deeper. I'll keep it, but that's going a little bit deeper. A bad law should not be used to enforce obedience to moral law. Okay, so between used to enforce obedience, a bad law should not be used to enforce obedience to moral law. I don't think he went that deep into how laws should be used. I think he kept it on a level of what you should do with them. Okay, according to King, a bad law should not be, and I'm going back to my theme, you have to follow just laws, you have to break unjust laws, and unjust laws are not natural. So they should not be regarded as having moral authority. I really like that one a lot. They should not be viewed as, they should be viewed as detrimental to humans. Sorry, I should have gotten rid of that one out at the very beginning. Should not be used to enforce obedience to moral law. Between these two, it should be A. Which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to the question? What are we looking for? So the very first thing, if you just saw my eyes, that's what I just did. I was looking at what ones can we get rid of? Okay. In question 31, we went up to lines 30 to 34, and we can use this question order rule because we're on evidence. So I can't get rid of this one because we only went to line 30 to 34 in question 31. I can't get rid of this one, but down here, we're going to 57. So because we're going to 57, I can get rid of D because that comes after line 57. So between these three, I'm looking for evidence that King is saying an unjust statute should not be regarded as having moral authority. A bad law should not be regarded as having moral authority. I'm just repeating so I remind myself what I'm looking for. Because there's a lot of words here. There's a lot of words. Okay. In lines 49, the answer to unjust. I'm going to get rid of that one because it doesn't say anything about how we should feel. He's just laying out the groundwork. There are two types, just and unjust. So that doesn't really provide us evidence for anything having to do with a bad law having moral authority. 51 to 52, between 1 and laws. Okay, I'm keeping that. So one has not only a legal but a moral responsibility to obey just laws. So we follow a law because of our moral obligation. I don't know that it really matches. I'm still looking for a bad law should not be regarded as having moral authority. 1 to all, 53 to 55. One has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. Oh, let's just set it word for word. Let's just set it word for word. Yes, there's our evidence. We used a quote. All right, as used in line 57, determine most nearly means. You know I love these most nearly means. Forget about what that word means. Do not tell me what you know that word means. Forget about it. Now, what's the difference between the two? How does one tell? How does one tell whether a law is just or unjust? How does one show? How does one distinguish? Remember, you want to keep them kindergarten. So how does tell, show, distinguish? Does that mean establish? Yeah. Tell, show, distinguish. I'll keep that. Regulate, does that mean tell, show, distinguish? It doesn't. Direct, does that mean tell, show, distinguished? It doesn't. Limit, does that mean tell, show, or distinguish? It doesn't. So we're keeping establish. The primary purpose of each passage. Okay, so I'm going to tell you. When we get here and we start seeing words like each, I'll write them here for you. Both. Remember, our two authors are antagonistic. They don't agree. They always will have a different viewpoint about how to reach a similar, end goal. So I'm going to go with, when I start seeing each, both, each of the passages say both authors. When I start seeing that, then I know that what they're asking me is the one that's true for passage 2. So the one that's true for passage 2. Each passage. So what they're going to do is they're going to write, 4 answers. There's going to be an answer for the kid that's going to get, the 400. There's going to be an answer for the kid that's going to get the 500. There's going to be the correct answer that has, what's true for passage 1. And then there's going to be the correct answer that's true for both. So be really, really careful not to, to narrow it down to 2, and then don't choose the one that's true just for passage 1. They do that every single time. They're going to write one that's true for just passage 2, but we are looking for each and both. Okay? So, does Martin Luther King Jr., so I'm going to force us to think about passage 2, does Martin Luther King Jr. make an argument about the relationship between the individual and the law? Yeah. Does Martin Luther King Jr. advance a view on how laws could be made more just? No, he doesn't do that. Does Martin Luther King Jr. question a claim that the morality of actions depends on their consequences? No, he does not do that. Does Martin Luther King Jr. discuss a change in the nature of the state and its power over the individual? No. So he makes an argument about the relationship between the individual and the law. Okay, here's another one now. Both. We see both. So I'm going to force you to think about passage 2. So every single time, I'm saying Martin Luther King Jr. now because he's the author of passage 2, but every single time you think, all right, which one is true for 2? Both authors would most likely agree with which statement about people who obey their government statutes. So remember, Martin Luther King Jr. is about moral responsibility. So let's, remember that if you follow a law, it's because it's a just law. But people who obey their government statutes, they fail to follow the guidance of their consciences. I don't think, although I do believe that that's what was said in passage 1, I do believe that's true for passage 1. I don't believe that was explicitly stated in passage 2. So I'm going to get rid of it. They are incapable of exercising moral judgment. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did not say that. They may not be acting in accordance with justice. Just laws, unjust laws, which statement about people who obey their government statutes. They value personal morality over the public good. Although that could be inferred, they didn't explicitly say that. So we're going to go with C. In the passages, a significant difference in how the two authors discuss morality is that Thoreau, this one, this is what I love to do on these ones. Okay, so as soon as I was reading it, then my eyes scanned to see what kind of question it was. And I like to take these ones. See, I saw it when it was a comma and while. And whenever they do comma while, what I like to do is to up the odds a little bit. I don't want to keep it as a question about with 4 answers. I want to make it 8 so that I'm making the odds a little bit more in our favor. I do know personally passage 2 I feel like a little bit better, and so what I want to do is see if I can narrow it down just by looking at the back half. So the front half is going to be Thoreau, the back half is going to be King. King indicates that most people consistently adhere to moral laws. Yeah, well, not really. He said you should do that. He didn't say the general population does. No, he didn't actually say that. Most people consistently adhere to moral laws. King indicates that people should follow a universal moral code. Yeah. King indicates that morality and human law are distinct. No, that's actually not true. King indicates that people should follow just laws. Yes, that's true. So I narrowed it down now between B and D. So now I'm going to think about Thoreau, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to look and see. People should do what they judge to be right. Is that what Thoreau said? Yeah, he did. Did Thoreau say even morally good laws should be disobeyed? Thoreau didn't say that. King said that. So B. Assuming that he agrees that the assertions in the final paragraph of passage 1, King would most likely recommend which course of action to Thoreau. I feel like I have the answer already. King would say, break laws, but do so openly and lovingly. Thoreau should obey laws upholding slavery. I can't even read anymore. King would never say. Dr. Martin Luther King would never say. Thoreau should uphold, I can't even read it. It's so wrong. Thoreau should obey laws upholding slavery while they're enforced, but should work to repeal them. Not true. Thoreau should view laws upholding slavery as immoral, but should not break them since doing so would lead to anarchy. Again, no. Thoreau should break laws upholding slavery, and in doing so should neither hide his actions nor try to avoid punishment. Yeah. Thoreau should openly criticize laws upholding slavery, but should follow them. No. All right, there we go. That's how you get through passage 1 and passage 2. You see the difference? I hope that what you did was you shifted your thinking into a focus on passage 2. Most of the questions come from passage 2. And have a peek in the answer key and see that these are the more difficult questions. A lot of my students get really fatigued around the time of passage 1 and passage 2. Typically, it's the 4th out of the 5 reading. That's where it often lands in your packet. And so some kids have gone with the strategy of starting with passage 1 and passage 2 while you're fresh and right out the door. So you know that you're getting them right with a fresh mind. And oftentimes kids don't struggle with the fiction section in the very first. So if you, if you have to be careful, of course, with your Scantron, but if you know 100% that you will mark these answers correctly, one strategy could potentially be to start with passage 1 and passage 2. All right. Thank you for studying with me today.